coach of the Lakers for the last couple of years and a longtime Los Angeles Laker player right here in the Rich Eisen Show studio. Byron Scott, good to see you, sir.
Rich, great to see you.
Did you have any idea when you strolled off the court that night that'd be your last game as Laker coach?
No, none at all. You know, I really thought that I would have another year to help these young guys develop and obviously go after some big-time free agents this summer and really get this thing turned around. So, as I stated before, you know, a little shocked by it. When Mitch told me the news, you know, that Sunday night. But that Monday morning, I woke up and, you know, I was ready to move on.
Yeah, sure. I mean, as I've said in the last
What else can you do?
I know,
you know
that.
What I mean?
You are. If I put a mirror in front of you, you would definitely fog it up, Byron. You know, you are alive and well. And I've noted, you know, I noticed that you've been going around to a lot. I was joking about the number of places you've attended and shown up, that there are T-shirts, a Byron Scott media tour that are going on.
They're still hot on the presses. We're going to get you guys one.
I appreciate that one.
You know, I'm going to have to bring them back after the show, but I'm going to definitely get you one.
I like it.
You know,
I like it.
The Byron Scott tour.
Now, I know
the farewell tour, just like Kobe's.
No, well, how about this? The Next Page tour. How does that sound?
That sounds good.
The Byron Scott Next Page tour. Before we do get to the next page, you did tell Dan, I know you told DP, blindsided was the word that you used. So there was no indication in between the end of the season and when you were told that you were not coming back at all? There was no writing on the wall? There was no smoke?
No.
Nothing?
Nothing.
So you just got a phone call from Mitch Kupchak, just say, hey, Byron, what's up? That's it? That's essentially what it was?
Well, pretty much. But it was more of, you know, Byron, can we meet? You know, can you come to the office and meet for a little while? And, you know, as I started driving that way, I was like, nah. You know, I started thinking about it. I was like, nah, you know, I know I'm going to get another year, you know, because that was basically our conversation 2 years ago. You know, this was going to be a 2 or 3 year deal where it was going to be really tough. And then hopefully we would be able to turn this thing around. So that is basically what I expected. So when I got the call and got in his office and, you know, we sit down and he started talking about it, I was just like, wow. You know, wow, I just, you know, thought in our conversations that, you know, we would at least get one more year. So, like I said, when I said blindsided or shocked, you know, that's how I felt at the time.
I've got Byron Scott here in the Rich Eisen Show studio, and you've got both ends of the spectrum here, okay? You've got the all-time great at the end of his career, half of what he used to be, maybe certainly physically, right? Wanting to play as much as he possibly, in his mind, could and wanted to. You got that. Then you got these young kids that you're trying to coach up at the same time. And D'Angelo Russell, the most important one of these kids, was, as you said at one point, 14 going on 19, basically, in terms of his maturity level.
19 going on 14.
Well, basically, sure, right? I guess that. So which was tougher for you to coach? I
think the young kids were tougher. Kobe and I had a great understanding. You know, I said, this is what I got on my mind as far as minutes that I want you to play. You know, what do you think? Tell me what you're thinking. And his number was a little bit higher, and I said, well, let's stick with this number. And he was like, cool. You know, I mean, we had no problem, no issues whatsoever. Trying to get the young guys all on the same page was probably the toughest thing because all those guys want to be the next Kobe, you know, and that takes time. I mean, you know, Kobe, it was his third year in the NBA before he started and became even anywhere close to what he is or what he was when he was arguably the best player in this league. So getting the young guys to understand how to play together and play NBA-style basketball and come every single night ready to play was probably the hardest part of the game for me opposed to Kobe. Kobe was not an issue whatsoever.
He never gave you pushback on number of minutes?
No, never.
What about with the kids, where you're trying to teach the kids what to do? Was he helpful in that regard?
He was. He was very helpful.
How so? Because you know folks outside looking in think, he suffered no fools. He wanted no part of these kids, no part of trying to make sure that they were going to be
well, I know what the outside people think, like you said, but I would see this guy in games, before games, halftime, after games, the early stages of the season, in training camp and in practice, where he was really, really trying to lend these guys a helping hand, talking to them about situations, how to handle pick and rolls, how to handle this, how to handle that. So he was very active as far as being a mentor to those guys and trying to help them. And there's a lot of situations on the bench where he would just bring guys to the side and talk to them, especially when he wasn't playing. You know, so he was very helpful. I mean, he had come to terms that this was his last year and that the best thing he could do was try to give these guys advice and help them as much as possible, and I thought he did a great job of that.
Well, unless, of course, somebody was sitting in his seat on the bench, right? Larry Nance.
Sitting in the seat on the bench, sitting in the seat in the theater, we did not allow. You had to earn that right to sit in his seat.
Make way for the Mamba.
Absolutely.
So D'Angelo Russell, is he the answer for the Lakers?
I don't know yet. I think D'Angelo has a great career in front of him. I think this kid can have a lot of success. I think the biggest thing with D'Angelo is he's going to have to learn how to work harder. His work ethic is going to be is the only thing I think that can really hold him back. Now, if he gets on board and he comes to work every single day and works hard before and after practice, I think this kid can be a star. But again, that's up to D'Angelo. That's something that you have to have inside you, and I think he can be a great player in this league.
Byron Scott, former Laker head coach, 3-time NBA champion, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. I'm assuming you're not on Snapchat. Is that a safe assumption? You're not
you
on
assume correctly.
Okay. So how did you find out about the Swaggy P video that D'Angelo Russell put out there in a direct message or something on Snapchat, and it got out there? How did you find out about this?
I found out driving home. Mitch Kupchak gave me a call and asked me had I heard about it or seen it. And I said, I haven't heard about it, I haven't seen it. So he sent me the video, and I looked at it, and as soon as I looked at it, I'm shaking my head and I'm going, wow. So I knew right then that we were going to have problems in the locker room. But I also knew, again, that this is a 19-year-old kid that, that's made a mistake, But I did know from that point on, when I got it, that we were going to have an issue in the locker room.
So what's the first thing you did? Who'd you call in first?
I didn't call in either one of those guys first. I wanted to kind of see how it played out in the locker room. I wanted to see if D'Angelo would go to Nick and try to apologize or try to confront the situation. I wanted to see if Nick would try to confront him. Because the first thing you want to do as a coach is see if they're going to solve the problem first. And if the guy doesn't want to talk, he doesn't want to talk. And that's basically what happened when D'Angelo said he tried to confront Nick and apologize. Nick didn't want anything to do with it. So, you can't force guys to come together. But I knew in that locker room there was going to be a little bit of division. Mm-hmm. But like I said to our whole team, if one guy in here at 19 or 20-year-old haven't made a mistake, raise your hand. And nobody could do that. So it was one of those things that you knew in time it's going to go away. But D'Angelo, as I told him, you're going to have to work your butt off to regain the respect and trust of your teammates.
And not just that, though. People who talk about this for a living would say that if he's there in Los Angeles, it'd be tough to get a free agent to come there based on what he did with the video. Would you say, knowing from just your tenure as a championship player as well, that that's a proper assumption?
It'll be an issue. I think it's definitely going to be an issue, and it's going to have to be addressed with that free agent, obviously. And again, I'm using the same terms as I just did. Hey, that free agent, I'm telling him, look, the kid is young, very remorseful of the situation. He understands he made a mistake, and I'm guaranteeing you it won't ever happen again. So you're going to have to sell that to to that free agent as well to get him to buy into it.
And obviously we don't know who the Lakers are going to be able to attract in this upcoming free agency period. But all that said, that Jim Buss has said, reportedly, to his sister and everybody else in the room a couple of years ago, that if the Lakers are not competing for, let's just say, the Western Conference Championship next year, or at least making the second round of the playoffs, he will step down. If he is held to those terms, do you think he will be in this job at this point next year?
I think if he's held to those terms, and I think Jeannie's probably going to hold him to those terms.
Sounds like it.
Then I think if it doesn't happen, then Jeannie's going to take over.
What do you think happens then? An improvement?
I don't know. I love the Buss family. I love this organization. Wish them nothing but the best. So I would love to see the Lakers back on top. I mean, I'm purple and gold, all the way. So if it's the best thing for the organization, then I think that's what she's going to do. But I would love to see them back on top.
And what's next for you? What do you want to happen? You want another gig in the NBA?
I want to coach again. I don't know necessarily if it's this year or not. But I definitely want to coach again. I got other things that I'm doing. I got my basketball camps that are coming up that I enjoy doing. I got a book that I'm going to be putting out in 2017. So those things are the other things that are on the horizon for me. But I'm still trying to understand, like, if you don't mind, Brian Windhorst, who was a guy I love.
Please.
Know Brian pretty well.
Yeah, he was on this show, said you got a raw deal.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. But he also said, I coached in a different era, which I'm trying to figure out what era is that. Because, I still look at guys like Popovich, who is kind of known as that military type coach and has been with San Antonio for so many years. And I agree with you when you said that, great players make great coaches. That's the bottom line. You need the horses to be a great coach in this league, but you also have to be able to reinvent yourself and give the team what they need at that particular time as well. So do I want to coach back in the NBA? Absolutely, because I think, number one, that I'm a great coach and I can get the job done, and I would like another opportunity at it. But if I don't, again, Rich, I'm good. I'm okay. I'm enjoying life.
Well, Jeannie has the number of a guy looking for a coach right now. You know that, right?
Oh, is that right?
What are your thoughts on the triangle, Byron Scott? What are your thoughts on the triangle?
I think the triangle is a great offense if you got the right people to run the triangle.
Named Carmelo Anthony?
I don't know if Carmelo is necessarily that person. I'm not with New York, and I don't know the other pieces to the puzzle. But you got to have, number one, you got to have 5 guys who are very intelligent as far as basketball is concerned. They got to have a high basketball IQ. And they got to be willing to share the ball. I mean, it's very simple. The triangle is all about reads. It really is. And if you got guys that understand how to play the game of basketball with the ball and without, it can be very successful.
Byron Scott is here on the Rich Eisen Show. Back in 60 seconds, I would like to talk to you about what's going on in the playoffs right now.
Absolutely.
Make you part of the paparazzi.
Absolutely.
For one segment,
Why
at
not?
the very least. Byron Scott is right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Back in a minute. Byron Scott right here on the Rich Eisen Show. I don't know if did you hear what Charles Barkley said during the game last night on TNT?
I didn't.
He said that the Hawks at this point in time, after they were getting beat up, said this game's over. Got to think about Game 3 and make a statement for that. Maybe start getting a little chippy out there. And then Charles Oakley went back at him and said that he was never really a tough guy on the court, and he's hiding behind TNT.
I did hear about that.
That's what that was Oakley. Well, that was what Oakley was responding to.
Oakley was pretty tough, though.
There's no doubt about that.
He was pretty tough.
But
I agree with Charles as far as
which Charles? Which Charles?
Barkley. At that particular point in that game, when you're at Atlanta Hawks, that game is pretty much over. You can't worry about that game. You do have to start thinking about Game 3. And what you should be doing while you're sitting there is getting even more upset at what they're doing, because they're making threes, they're dancing, they're celebrating, they're having a great time over there. So as a player and a competitor, you're sitting over there watching that. That should be really just pissing you off, even more so to get even more hyped up and ready for Game 3.
Do referees swallow their whistles in the last minute of a playoff game?
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen that in the San Antonio OKC series where Game 2, Waiters, he elbows Ginobili, there's no call, and then they come back and they say, yeah, we blew the call. Doesn't help Pop, doesn't help San Antonio. But, yeah, I think in the last couple of minutes of a game, if it's close, the referee tend to let you be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more physical, because they don't want to be the deciding factor in that game.
Which is it better as a coach or a player for that scenario? Which is it better? What can you take advantage of most, when you were playing or coaching?
When you're playing. When you're playing.
So why wouldn't somebody in the last minute of a game, playoffs on the line, just take somebody out? What are you going to do? What, are they going to call it? Because they have not shown, Byron, that they're
going to call it. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I mean,
wouldn't you in the huddle just take them out?
In the Cleveland game, I think we would have got together as a team and said the next one that shoots a 3, knock his block off.
If you were Budenholzer, that's what you've done last night?
Well, I wouldn't have done it if I was a coach. I'm saying the players.
Okay, the players.
They should have said the next time JR or whoever takes a 3, run through him. Run through him. Make them put the ball on the floor. At least make them think about it a little bit. But you can't do that nowadays. In the 80s, that was common. 80s and 90s, guys would, if they felt you were showing them up, guys would get a little bit more physical, as far as going after you and making a statement. In this day and age in basketball, they don't do that because, number one, they're scared of the fines and being suspended for a game. Because the NBA will come down a little bit harder on you now, too.
Who was that guy on your Laker team, Showtime Laker, who would get you all together?
Started?
Oh, just basically say, yeah, let's do something about this. Who would be that
Michael
guy?
Cooper probably was the one that was started.
He would be the one who started.
Michael Cooper.
What about you? What about you?
Oh, I had no problem with it either. Just making sure that you make a statement for that next game.
What about Magic? Would he say something?
He had no problem with it either. Our 3 guards basically were our enforcers. And we were the one that were always
Magic
starting.
was it? You use the word enforcer for Magic Johnson?
I'm telling you, we were the ones that was always in the mix when it came to altercations on the basketball court.
What about Riley? Was he the one who was advocating this sort of stuff?
Riley didn't ever have to really advocate it. Again, we kind of took care of that on our own on the floor. Now, he might say at halftime or a game or before a game, that these guys are just, wearing you guys out. You know, they're more physical, more aggressive, and he knew that would just get into our heads, and we would go out there and just try to destroy somebody. So he knew how to push the right buttons to get us to go out there and play that way.
Byron Scott right here on the Rich Eisen Show. What is Steve Kerr going through right now with Curry's knee? Obviously, you haven't seen an MRI. You're not a doctor. You don't play one on TV. But what do you think?
But I did spend the night at Holiday Inn.
Well, you know, I'm a courtyard guy. So what do you think Steve Kerr is going through right now with him?
I think with Curry, he's really looking at these next two games to decide if he wants him to come back in Game 4 or Game 5, you know, even as healthy as possible. These 4 days of rest obviously is going to help Stephen Curry as well. But I think Steve right now is just saying, look, our guys are playing great basketball, you know, without our number one gun. And let's see if we can go up to Portland and win another one. And if we can come back home 3-1, you know, it gives him even more rest.
Does he need to break a sweat in a game before taking on the Spurs or the Thunder? Or because, you know, that's what many people are saying. That
right.
Get him out there one time before the Western Conference Finals everybody assumes that they're going to make.
I don't necessarily think he has to. I think if you can get him to the Western Conference Finals against the Spurs or whoever, OKC, as healthy as possible is going to be the number one key for him. You know, because if he plays in one of those games just to get a sweat, just to get ready for the Western Conference Finals, I don't think that's going to make that much of a difference. He's the type of guy that he doesn't need much time when he gets back on the floor. That rust comes off pretty quick. Mm-hmm. You know, he's one of those guys that, you know, one game, boom, he's right back into that rhythm, into that groove. And so I wouldn't necessarily say that he has to play in one of these games against the Portland Trail Blazers. I think right now the number one goal is to make sure he's extremely healthy going against the Spurs because they know that's going to be their nemesis.
Who wins it all, do you think?
Again, if he's healthy, I like Golden State. You know, I think nobody can match up with them with the style of play that they play. You can't beat them at their own game in a 7-game series. And I think with the way Cleveland played last night, everybody thinks that Cleveland has a chance, and they absolutely do have a chance. There's no doubt about that. Anytime you got LeBron on your team, you got a chance. But I just think Golden State plays that game a little bit better than Cleveland does.
Do you like the openness the league has now about the last 2 minutes of a game after the game, but what the refs missed? Do you like that?
I do, but it still doesn't change the outcome of the game. You know what I mean?
Does it make you feel any better, though,
no,
that they're
not
being
really.
open?
Not really. I mean, as a coach, you know they missed the call, you know. And so when you go in the locker room after the game, you can't sit there and say, if they would have made the call, we had a chance to win the game. It's over with. So when them coming out the next day and saying we blew the call, it doesn't do me any good. You know, I appreciate the fact that you acknowledge it, yeah, but it doesn't do me any good.
But, you know, that they're at least knowing, at least confirming what you thought, right?
Show me to find the pink slip. You know, they talk about the referees get fined and all that. Show me the pink slip.
How about this one? How about this one? You are allowed to be open about what you think of the last 2 minutes of the game also.
From a coaching standpoint?
Yes, sir.
And not get fined?
Yes.
Oh, I think that would be great.
Free shots.
Oh, heck yeah, that'd be great.
What do you think? Because if they're open about it, right?
You should be able to be open about it and not get fined if they made those type of mistakes.
But only in the last 2 minutes. Can't do it about the third quarter.
Oh, no, I agree.
Can't do it about the second quarter.
I agree.
Even if it's a crucial call with 2 minutes and 15 seconds left in regulation, you still can't call them out. No, only the last two. If the league's open about it, they should let you be.
I don't mind that. You know, because at the end of the day, those last 2 minutes of the game, you know, it really never comes down to that last 2 minutes anyway. I mean, you know, you make mistakes in the first, second, third quarter that probably can cost you the game as well. So that last 2 minutes, if you're allowed as a coach to go on and say what you feel about the referees and the job they did that night without getting fined, man, you see a lot of coaches taking a whole lot of shots, you know, at some of the calls that are not being made and some of the calls that are missed during that last 2 minutes of a game.
844-204-RICH is the number to dial. Can I get you to stay one more segment?
Absolutely.
Because their football's coming back to your home area.
Coming back to Inglewood, California.
Inglewood, well, it's coming. It's coming back to Los Angeles, but they're building the stadium right there.
It's in Inglewood, where I grew up.
That's right. I've got Byron Scott here on the Rich Eisen Show. Give us a call, 844-204-RICH, and then you still again have time. Next hour, we will reveal who wins the $50 Shari's Berries gift card in time for Mother's Day. Just email us, show@richeisenshow.com. Of the most valuable item of your mom's that you broke. That's how we celebrate Mother's Day here on Rich Eisen Show. That's more. Back with more in a moment.
Should be called the Inglewood Rams.
There we go. Inglewood's finest. Byron Scott, one more segment with us here on the Rich Eisen Show. Hour number 3, your phone calls at 844-204-RICH. We'll take them and update you on some other things going on in the world of sports, including a contract in the NFL that raised a few eyebrows, to say the least. So the Rams, does it mean you're a Rams fan now? What's your football team?
I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan.
Growing up in Inglewood?
Growing up in Inglewood, I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I jumped on the San Francisco 49er bandwagon when my boy Ronnie Lott got drafted by them. So those are my two teams, and the only two teams that I really, really root for. So even though the Rams are coming here to Los Angeles and will be playing in Inglewood, California, my hometown, if they're not playing the Steelers and they're not playing the 49ers, I will root for them to do well.
I like that.
But anytime they play one of my teams, I got to root for my teams.
Now, you do realize that most football players think they can ball.
Yeah, I do.
They think they can hoop it up. You know that, right?
Yeah, I do.
And what is your analysis? I assume you've played with some football players.
I played with some back in my college days and even in my pro days, and I told them all to stick to football. Just like they told me stick to basketball.
Okay.
But they think they can hoop, and some of them got a little game on them.
I think LeBron thinks that if he wanted to try NFL football, he would succeed at it. He's got the body for it. That is for sure.
Does.
Okay.
Yes, he does.
So there's not many basketball players that say I could try football and excel at it.
Right.
Or want to try football.
Right.
The other way around, though. You give most NFL players a shot to try and play in the NBA.
Oh, they'll take it.
How many do you think could make it?
None. Now, you got to be special. Because most football players, you look at the Antonio Gates, who played basketball, Graham, who played basketball.
Jimmy Graham,
sure.
Jimmy
Jimmy Graham, who played basketball. These guys are tight ends that play probably power forward or small forward in the NBA level.
Now, one time, we're at a Raiders game for the NFL Network, and you know how close the Raider Stadium is to Oracle, right? They're right across. You could really flip a basketball and bounce it a couple times and hit the home of the Raiders. So there's the spot that our green room was in, and we noticed that a hallway led right into Oracle. So Dion picked up a basketball and started hooping it up. And normally he wouldn't leave the green room for anything before the game, before the broadcast.
Right.
And he's telling me, he's shooting it. He's telling me what he could do on the basketball court.
Yeah.
You're saying even Dion?
No, Dion, no. Terrell Owens, and I know T.O.
Yeah.
Big fan of T.O., love T.O. I got a chance to meet him at the Staples Center this year.
Yeah.
I know he loves ball. Randy Moss, know he loves ball because he used to play with Jason Williams back in the day.
Sure.
But it's a reason they all stuck to football.
Because they can't. Why? What is it? They don't have the touch. They don't have the touch. They don't. What is it?
Most of them, most of the basketball players in football that think they have a real chance of making it in the NBA or could have played in the NBA are wide receivers. Skill position guys or tight ends. So they got the touch, they got the footwork, they got the muscle and everything. But most of them, they just can't. They can't do all that. Football's a little bit different. You just got one play, you take a break, you come back, you do another play. Basketball, we're going like this. And when you get tired, and this is in any sport, the first thing that goes is your mind. So now you stop thinking about the things you're supposed to do out there because fatigue can make cowards out of anybody. And all of a sudden,
I love that.
All of a sudden, that football player that wanted to play basketball realizes that this is a whole different monster to try to tame.
That's almost like Marcellus saying that's pride messing with your mind. You almost went Pulp Fiction on me right there.
Pretty much,
Byron Scott.
Well, Marcella and I, sometimes we right here.
Good to see you. Good to see you, Byron
always
Scott. Come on back. I know you got a basketball camp in August, right?
Basketball camp in August, August 1st through the 5th at Fullerton College. And then, like I said, the book will be out in May 2017.
And please come back. There's lots of basketball still to be played here this season. I'd love to have you back.
Will do.
844-204-RICH, number to dial. Hour number 3, all about you. Thanks, Byron Scott. Appreciate it. Good to see you.
Appreciate it.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.